All right, we are on to our last session, and I want to again thank our sponsors, the Blair Brothers, for helping us put this on, the 107 Cafe, because that's where we're at. This is a beautiful facility, Affinity Jewelers, MC Homes Realty, and all the people that come out and the candidates who are coming on here and risking stuff, okay? But we are having a lot of fun, and I hope you guys are enjoying it at home. And again, if you throw in some comments, please hit that share button. Some of the candidates or all the candidates will get back to you responding later. And so we're going to be talking about community unification, how to bring the entire Chatham-Kent together, all the wards, all 6 of them, as well as youth retention. But I want to introduce Chris June from Ward 6, Trevor Thompson from Ward 2, Brock McGregor from Ward 6, Karen Kirkwood-White from Ward 6, and Don Fuoco from Ward 6 as well. We're heavy on the Ward 6, but you guys have a lot of stuff.
A little bit.
So,
Poor Trev.
we're gonna pick on him here. So the number one way we can pick on him is making him start first, okay?
All right.
So let's start with community unification, and how do we bring Chatham-Kent together?
People. You bring Chatham-Kent together through people, because Chatham-Kent suffers from the same situation that Canada suffers from. We have too much geography and not enough shared history. That's what it comes down to. So we need not only to attract more people to the community, to grow all of our communities together that are going to feel like it's not just Blenheim that's my home. It's not just Wheatley or south side of Chatham. It's that Chatham-Kent is my home, because that's all I've ever known. There's a lot of us here. And then you have to offer them things to do in each and every community as well, so you don't get stuck just sitting in Blenheim or wonderful Erio, that you're traveling out to Mitchell's Bay and that you know that the beach out there is wonderful, or you're going to Wallaceburg for Wambo. So we can do that as a council by working together, first and foremost, presenting that unification, presenting a united front that, listen, I understand the issues in Ward 6, I understand the issues in Ward 5, because I spend a lot of time there with my family, with my friends. And then when we're sitting around the council table, I understand the issue that you need support on. You understand my issue. So first and foremost, it's attracting more residents, it's building a shared history, and it's working together at the council table.
Awesome. Don, you want to build on that?
Sure. Well, I've had the opportunity I'm born and raised in Wallaceburg. I've had the opportunity to work in Blenheim. I've had the opportunity to work in Dresden, and obviously now live in Chatham. So I understand when when we're talking about unification, I understand the small town where they sometimes feel, that they're not part of the municipality as a whole. And I think one way to do it is make sure that they feel part of it. So when, so for instance, we had the opportunity to go in Wallaceburg about a week or so ago with one of the candidates, actually invited the mayoral candidates as well as some councillors to come and hear what the issues are of Wallaceburg. So I think that's something that I believe that would have spoken volumes to those people in that area, to say, hey, look, we had people from Blenheim come, we had people from Chatham come, we had people to show up. So do we think about maybe having town hall meetings, like similar like what they do during budget time? Like the budget committee does send out teams to different areas. Now mind you, they're not always well attended, but certainly that's something that at least shows interest, that we are interested in everybody being part of this community. So maybe we have town hall meetings where so all the councils say, look, instead of us meeting on a night to do whatever, we're actually going to go to Blenheim, we're actually going to go to Dresden, we're actually going to go to Ridgetown, Tilbury, to show up to say, hey, we are understanding it's bigger than just the geographical confines of Chatham. It is we're all in this together, and being there is a good idea.
Awesome. Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. So I agree with both of those points. I really believe that it is a 1A and 1B type of scenario. Civic engagement, for sure. We've got a great population, 104, 105,000 people. We've got a lot of pockets of very cool things that go on. So historically, we've got some great events. So we have a lot of people here that we can shuffle across borders, whether you're coming out of Chatham to Blenheim, you're coming out of Chatham necessarily to Wallaceburg or Tilbury, or vice versa. So civic engagement, we can do a lot by just moving the existing population across what we deem as some of those borders. And I don't believe that we market well enough within Chatham-Kent specifically to be able to say, what happens in Blenheim with Cherry Fest? How do we get our citizens, our community members invested from Wallaceburg to drive across what literally is a 30-minute trek to really enjoy what happens there, or vice versa, getting our folks from Tilbury to get out to Wambo. So there's a lot of really cool things happen. We tend to spend, when you think about the economics, a lot of time on trying to draw from outside of our municipality as a collective whole. There's a huge opportunity to just, first of all, stay within, focus within. The second part of that has got to be our language. So our leadership, whether you're talking about our mayor, you've got to be able to inspire. Whether you're talking about our collective horseshoe, as Trevor likes to caption during his tales from the horseshoe at council meetings. But you have current councillors that really do think broadly, and I really hope that during this election that those things are thought of. You've got current existing councillors that think bigger than just the ward they represent. They already do that, and I think that that's an important thing to carry forward. Outside of that, leadership has to change their language. We have to be able to make sure that we are consciously aware of the words that we use, as in, we are Chatham-Kent, so we no longer have to be Chatham, and then you create this divide. Leon Leclerc was talking at the last council meeting about that perception. I think he said this very well. We've got the IPM coming up, and there was an awful lot of councillors, an awful lot of citizens, a lot of community groups that have come together. You've got current councillors that sit on that group and committee that aren't thinking about Pancourt, Dover specifically. They're thinking very broadly. So his point to this was that it tends to be more of a political divide that some politicians locally might use more specifically, but I don't believe that it fully exists. There are certainly some disparity, don't get me wrong, I've certainly seen that. I've also, like Don, have worked in various communities within Chatham-Kent, so I've had an opportunity to see that. However, a lot of our folks don't feel that way. They really don't. So leadership creates sometimes that divide. We can use different language, and we have some current councillors that don't use that language. When they talk, I hear them talk. I've been able to go and sit down at the table, have a lot of very good, candid conversations. I don't hear them talk specifically about their ward. I hear them say things like, this is what Chatham-Kent's doing. These are the conversations that we are currently having. This is where we are engaged. And I think there's a real message to be delivered. So civic engagement for sure, we've got to start within. Secondly, leadership has to change their scripting and their language about how we define who we are as a community. We don't have to live the amalgamation life for another 20 years. It's gone, it's over with. We've got an entire generation that doesn't even know what that means.
Amen.
Yeah.
It's on you, Brock.
I think Chris was reading my notes.
I was, after our coffee.
But I think he hits on a good point that a lot of it starts from leadership. So I think that if we're honest with ourselves, a lot of this divide between wards, divide between communities, has been and continues to sometimes be politically advantageous to some people. So as much as those divisions don't exist and shouldn't exist, people play on them, and they play on them politically. So I think that as leaders in the community, we can turn away. That's an easy path to go down. We don't need to go down it. So I think that's one of the places it starts. And the answers really are already there. When we talk about generational change, I think when you look at the way the community is now, the way that people are growing up now, the experiences that they have within Chatham-Kent, that is much more a Chatham-Kent experience. So I look at even my childhood growing up. I grew up in North Kent. I played hockey in Dresden. I went to school in Chatham. I had family in South Kent. You know, we go out to Rondeau for vacation. So Chatham-Kent felt like home, not just a little corner of North Kent. And I don't think that's a unique experience. And the more that people understand that you may work in one area, live in another area, we're all connected and we share these resources, we get away from that really hyper-focused locality issue. And you know, I think that's something that is naturally going to change over time, and that leadership needs to start reflecting that that's already where we are. Right. So I think that, you know, us around this table, in this position, people that are elected into leadership positions, need to start making that a reality. And some of it's really simple. I mean, when you're on council, and Trevor can attest to this, you have to go to other communities for issues. You know, Wallaceburg was facing some issues when we were on the PUC, when we were talking about the future of their water treatment plant that was there. Those were community meetings that were held in that community. Being a Ward 6 councillor, of course I went out to them and listened to residents of Wallaceburg. That was important. It was an important issue to them, so it was an important issue to me. And I think that's where we need to go as a community, and that's what we need to feel is common practice on council.
Agree.
Kim?
What can I possibly
I don't know. That's what I was thinking. It's like, what can you possibly add
what's
here?
left? I guess from my experience as a former councillor in the town of Tilbury, way back 35 years ago, things have changed significantly. And we're talking a lot about the what needs to happen. I think we need to talk more about the how it's going to happen. And I like the idea of making an effort to go out to the other communities and actually witnessing and experiencing what those communities have to offer. I've lived in Dealtown, I've lived in Blenheim, I've lived in Chatham, I've lived in Tilbury, and I know that there are some significant events and attractions that we should be promoting all across Chatham-Kent. So I think it starts with a conversation, and it takes effort to go out and make things happen. So sitting idly and just hoping it's going to happen is not going to work. We have to make the effort. And you're right, leadership is right from the top, right on through.
And just to add on the timing factor, I think you mentioned 30 minutes here, there. Like, that's something we have to get people understanding that, you know, if you let's say you live in the GTA area and want to go, you live in Scarborough and you want to go to the Eaton Center, you're at least a 45-minute drive, right? And that's breaking, you know, stop and go traffic, etc. You can virtually get anywhere in this municipality within 35, 40 minutes from one end, well, maybe a little longer from one end to the other. But still, we have to understand that people have to understand that everything is within a reasonable drive time. It's not stop and go. It is here, it's available, and we just have to convey that message. Look, you can do this here. There's lots of stuff to do here, and it's within a certain geographical radius. You're not worrying about traffic, etc. Right?
Here's a great segue maybe to the next question. So, Darn, I agree. Right? This is entirely accessible from, we're not downtown Toronto, but transportation accessibility truly doesn't exist here. So one of those factors that helps to eliminate that potential barrier when we're talking about working as a municipality, as a unified team, transportation has to be addressed. We've got some good temporary solutions such as the beach bus, right? That, you know, very event-driven type of things. But we have huge transportation issues. We're not like a London to be more comparative outside of a Toronto or a Windsor. We all know the geographical issues that we face. We all know the population density issues that we face. Those are taxable infrastructure dollars that go to support things like public transportation. So while we have all of these great ancillary things that happen, more specifically outside of Chatham in particular, we still have a real challenge, not only from a marketing perspective, but moving people. So whether we're talking about youth and trying to get engagement, so I brought up the point about civic engagement, whether we're talking about youth and trying to get them from one side of our municipality to another, many of them don't drive. My daughter's 22, she has a driver's license, but only just recently, but doesn't have a car. She can't really enjoy the same type of social inclusion activities as a millennial in that under 40 age group. The flip side of that becomes, how do we move our senior citizens? So they have very comparable type of concerns, whether it's from a social isolation perspective and trying to be more inclusive, being able to appreciate what they have to give and offer. But we've also got this real significant issue of getting them to simple things, basic things like, how do we get them to their grocery store? How do we get them back in the middle of winter or in 40-degree humididex weather? How do we get them, you know, to the eye doctor? Oftentimes it relies on their children or you know, some other type of partnership to be able to move them around. So those become real concerns, and if we don't address them inter-municipality, right, more broadly, so it's not just about moving them around Blenheim, that might be a bit easier, specifically smaller type of geography and demographic, but that impacts things like employment opportunities. How do we get the folks that live in Tilbury that are able, willing, and capable of working, but the opportunity for them happens to be in Ridgetown? How do we successfully get them there? How do we get them to Blenheim? You know, we've got RS Polls, I believe it is ready to do a job fair. We've got employment opportunities. We have a large segment, a large demographic of capable, skilled, capable individuals, though they just don't have the transportation means to get them to where they need to be. To me, that's shameful. How do we fix that? It's a tough question to ask when you've got to solve that problem financially over the size of geography that we have.
And I think you couple in that size of geography with even municipal borders. So transportation doesn't stop at borders.
Right.
You know, there's people in Wheatley that work in Leamington or that need to get to doctor's appointments in Leamington. There's people in different communities that have to get both out of our community, and people that aren't in our community need to get in there. And we don't have great regional transportation. There's really no regional transportation strategy, and that's just another layer that you add on to this transportation challenge that there's no easy answer to, but that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be tackled and it shouldn't be a priority.
Agreed.
All right. Moving back to community unification, like specifically, we got the International Plowing Match coming up. Okay, we got about 80,000 people predicted to be here, maybe more. Yep. Do you think we can use this event, okay, over the next 4 years to really kind of bring more people together as a community and kind of build on that?
I think if there's any evidence that could happen was last Saturday morning at the Freedom Hall at the Bradley. I was blown away by the number of people who showed up to volunteer for the International Plowing Match. A 4-hour training orientation session, and when you saw that many people come forward that are so keen on promoting our community, that will build and build and build. And I think we have a tremendous opportunity to engage more people as they see the benefit of that event, and the Pinties as well.
Okay, so we got a couple of events.
Yeah, and I think that to Karen's point, that volunteer opportunity not just promotes our community, but when you're volunteering at the IPM, you're volunteering with volunteers from other communities.
Right.
So that's a networking opportunity. And often when we're civically engaged, we might just be engaged in an organization that's really local. But when you're looking at a project to this scale, you do get to interact with all these great people that maybe you don't see on a regular basis. So I know being in on those meetings, you're seeing people from Tilbury, from Pancor, from Wallaceburg, from everywhere that maybe you don't get to work with all the time, or you don't see on a regular basis, and really get that idea of how passionate they are about the community, and that's going to translate into some long-term relationships as well. So I think that you're going to see that there's some successes that come on the heels of the IPM as well.
And the people that were there are all ambassadors or potential ambassadors for Chatham-Kent.
Well, it goes back to the shared history I was talking about, right? I mean, I'll take a little bit of a negative slant here. From the external viewpoint, can anybody name where the IPM was 5 years ago? Probably not. But the effects internally continue to last. So, like you said, building those relationships across municipal borders is a big thing. Taking the energy from the IPM and continuing that. I mean, Councillor McGregor said it really well. We've got the IPM, we've got the Pinties. These are all things that shine the light on us, that sometimes even within the community, and it's not just a Chatham-Kent problem, but we have a tendency to forget. Like, oh, this is the stuff we have here in Chatham-Kent. So again, building those relationships is absolutely key. And I mean, I'm looking forward to the IPM. I know everybody else is. It's huge out in South Kent, the people talking about it. And it's on the other side of the river. It's not that, unless you're driving a tractor, it's not all that far.
Through the construction.
Even then you can make it.
Oh, even then you can make it. I'm thinking about it, yeah.
Awesome. And I remember back to a time where I went to a room full of volunteers for the first Retro Fest. And that happens every year here, and it's an amazing thing every time. So we covered that. Let's move on to youth retention, okay? And this is more, not just broad terms, what specifically can we do? Okay, something actual that we can do to bring youth back. Because, as Henry Zavek said in the last one, there's the biggest population is 0 to 14. That's a growing population of 16,000 people. They're going to grow up. How do we bring them back?
There was an idea several years ago that United Way initiated, and it had to do with trying to get a hold of all of the contact information from the students that were leaving high school and moving on to college and university, and trying to create a master database of contact information, that we could keep in touch with these young people, let them know what's going on in the community, invite them back if there was something special going on in a particular weekend, and then staying in touch so that when those job opportunities popped up, that they would be aware of them and could come home, not only to meet with prospective employers, but to see what's been happening. I love what Trevor's doing with the Tales from the Horseshoe. I really look forward to getting that. And if that kind of thing could be communicated to the young people who have left town, and it's great, go away, get your college and university education, but think about coming back. I have a grandson that's doing an internship at OPG right now in Darlington, and he wants to come home. And I want to make sure that he knows what's going on here, so that if there's something that is of interest to him to come back and participate in, that we have that opportunity to stay connected.
Awesome.
I've got two views on this. I'm a come from away. I'm not originally from this area, so my town didn't retain me, which is an interesting way to look at it, because now I'm trying to figure out ways to retain other people. So it comes down to, why did I leave? Well, I left first and foremost for a job, clearly. So what can a municipality do to entice employers to hire in good paying jobs? It's tricky. High-speed internet is one, especially in the rural areas, that we need to be able to support, and we've made investments in that area. And then after I was here, now why did I stay? Well, it's quality of life and it's affordability. So you got to give people a reason to move, you got to give them the hook, and then you got to make it affordable for them to do so, to stay. So that goes back to, again, the quality of life. South Kent is fantastic. Well, all of Chatham-Kent's fantastic with our water, our small town feels, the slower pace of life. That attracts a certain type of person. And then again, make it affordable for them to do so. So for me, that's minding the store. It's a I guess a simplified way of saying it, but keeping an eye on the budget, making the strategic investments, and presenting a unified front. But at the same time, we're having a big issue with affordable housing. And a lot of people view that sometimes as just social housing, but it's not. We need to find ways, and it's working with the province and working with our developers to open up more housing, even in the $150,000, $200,000 range. You need it for the seniors that live on one floor. You need it for the young families. I mean, I can't afford the house I bought 10 years ago anymore. So we need to find ways to work that too. So what can we do specifically? We can open up, again, some opportunities there through the Ontario, well, through our official plan, because it's not just a flick of the switch. You can't just build on ag land. I know lots of people like to think you could, but you can't. There's a process that has to be done. And then you have to build those opportunities for people first to come, and then you got to keep them here.
Interesting number of options that have been explored in recent months. The Tiny Homes Initiative, and you know, that's not for everybody, but it's one option. Home share is another consideration, where you've got an elderly person living alone at home and wanting an opportunity to share their home with a young person. Some really great examples of that initiative happening in Toronto, where people are looking for an opportunity to engage with each other. So.
It's interesting story. There was a recent survey done by Abacus, which heavily focuses on that millennial generation. So again, 40 and under. The number one concern of that population demographic specifically is access, affordability, and home ownership.
Absolutely.
If we can't provide that here with reasonable access and affordable home ownership, they won't put roots here because they won't be invested here. It's an equity stake. Somewhere along the line, we've got to be able to build homes here, whether that's new homes or second sale homes that become affordable. I've dealt with a number of prospects trying to locate here for employment opportunities. They can't even rent affordably here, but certainly can't really afford to buy a home here as first-time homeowners. So there's a number of obstacles, Trevor, to your point around the affordability issue. So not only does that affect what is, statistically speaking, the largest voting demographic in Canada, 40 and under, it has significant perilous impact on our senior citizens. they're dealing with a fixed income that doesn't increase necessarily at the same rate as cost of living, right? CPI. And those folks are being priced out of the rental market. So it's one thing for someone to relocate here from Toronto, Mississauga, etc. We hear all of these stories. They're building 2,000 square foot, rancher style homes, selling it, a place in Toronto, Milton, wherever it might be, for $1.5 million, being able to build something affordably here for $500,000, and they bank the rest. Trouble is, folks, is that they don't spend all but 6 months here spending their dollars buying locally here. That really does create a bit of a challenge. Great thing that they're paying property taxes. However, the rest of the investment in the community isn't really existing. So we're at two ends of an age group, demographic, facing the same kind of housing challenge. So how do we get the younger group started, so those under 40, and how do we give secured housing to those that are going to be retired, semi-retired? Karen touched on two very good things, and the United Way has been very purposeful, I think, at being involved in the Tiny Homes Project. And I love the concept and the idea of that shared living space type of idea, because you get social integration. And there's a lot to be learned coming from that group in that knowledge transfer to, again, that millennial age group, right? Those 40 and younger. And that helps them be invested in the community. So the United Way does some very good things and are really trying to give some leadership and push forward some of those creative incentive ideas.
As I'm sure you all are doing, I've been doing a lot of door knocking. And I think I mentioned one of your talks, came across 5 people on one street where they were all new to Chatham. So, I asked one guy, like, what brought you here? I work for the government. Okay, so is that why you came? Well, actually, no. I actually work in Sarnia, but he's commuting back and forth because he could not find affordable housing in Sarnia. He had to move to Chatham. So that's what he ended up doing. So, so people are, and as I've been sharing at the door, people are saying, "Oh yeah, so a young family just bought their home just down the road." So I think people are starting to come here because of affordability compared to the large urban centers, right? So I did have an opportunity to bring a bunch of young people into my home because I wanted to say, okay, and they were probably aged 18 to 22, and asked them, like, okay, so what is it going to take to get you guys to come back? So first of all, they're all going to away to post-secondary education. I can't remember what everyone wants to do, but one specifically wants to be a biologist. Well, the chances of him coming back to Chatham probably few and far between. However, we heard on a chamber tour that he may have an opportunity here, right? So they talked about things to do in Chatham-Kent. So we talked about the theater. So they talked about, well, if you want to go see a theater production, you might be $80 to $110 to go see something, right? So here's something where we as a municipality, to make things maybe more affordable, more attractive for people to come, or young people to come here and stay here, is instead of having a half-packed theater production, because the ticket prices are not affordable for some people, maybe we look at reducing the costing of that to make it a packed theater, because more people can go, and then more people are interested. So I think these are some of the things that we want the people, the young people want to do. I think they do want to come back, because again, who wants the wear and tear in your car, the hustle and bustle? We hear Toronto now is what their all-time murder rates are up. Like, here we don't have those issues here in Chatham-Kent, and again, we don't have white-knuckle driving as we're driving through. So I think we just have to get the message out that there are opportunities here. And other things too, I know there was a company that did, I forget the name of the company, I think it's maybe a competitor, I'm not sure, but did an excellent video on what goes on in Chatham-Kent. Maybe we need to start putting that from what goes on from a opportunity to enjoy the community, like the waterways, the festivals we have. Maybe you find a private well-funded corporation to put those things out there to say, hey, look, social media is a great opportunity, to get the message out. Maybe people start seeing it. I happen to think that I was the person that caused people to realize Chatham-Kent, because I took a picture one day of the 427 merging onto 401. There's like 8 to 12 lanes of traffic, and say, is this what you want for your life, right? So that's a joke. But anyway, those are the realities.
Just so we know.
But the realities of it, when people start noticing Chatham. But anyway, the realities of it is we want to make sure people do come here and stay here.
And there's no question that we need to have things for people to do when they're not working.
Yeah, absolutely.
we can talk about that ripple effect, the trickle down effect, right, that a lot of economists might like to talk about. And there can be great debate as to whether it truly works. I think Don makes a great point, though. If the municipality is going to own something like the theater, and not everybody thinks that it's the right thing to do, and it certainly has cost a lot of money without doubt. Thankfully, well before my decision-making time, well before anybody sitting here's decision-making time, but we have to, as leaders, be accountable. But if we can find a way to make that work from a cheaper pricing context to bring more people there, it starts to have an impact on giving them other things to do, like Karen's mentioning. So perhaps that means that people find 3 other things to do outside of going or along with going to the theater. They're going to go to the retail shops. They're going to buy, maybe it's lunch, maybe it's dinner, and they're also going to go to the theater. But what that ends up doing is it causes those retail shops, those local mom and pop shops that as a more tight-knit community that we tend to hold more dear, it allows them to grow. So small business, that's the impact I start to see here. It's going to boost their business. It's going to help them and decide to hire perhaps just one more person. If every small business in Chatham-Kent had an opportunity to hire just one more person, could you imagine what happens then to our unemployment rate? What does that happen from an affordability perspective when people then start to reinvest those dollars in local shopping, right, internally, back into the economy? So there are right places, there are strategic places for the municipality to invest their dollars. We talk about things like infrastructure, but that's social, again, inclusion and those types of things where maybe we take the bite here, but we've just put an additional 1,000 people back to work. 1,000 people that are working that will eventually save for a down payment, buy a house, property tax dollars, revenue dollars are investing in local produce, supporting our ag community, supporting our retail sector. That's what you're trying to achieve when you talk about fiscal responsibility and you talk about where do we need to invest dollars. It's in providing those kind of incentives. So you take a bite on one thing, and business development is absolutely, that's what it comes down to. It's can you make the right investment that creates an opportunity that's bigger than just that moment.
And I think that we've established that the big thing that draws people back is opportunity. We know that. You're not coming back without an opportunity, and we know there's opportunities here. You talk to employers, they're looking to expand. They always talk about a skills gap and trying to attract skilled workers. So when you look past opportunity, and we talk about affordability of housing, I think there's two other things you have to look at, factors you have to look at. As Karen said, those outside of work opportunities. Are we investing appropriately in green space? Are we supporting the arts and culture in our community? Things that are important for quality of life. And I think the other thing you have to look at is, are you a welcoming community? So that, I think, is a very important aspect of Chatham-Kent and something we've improved on. And I think a few recent examples of where we've seen some real positive outcomes. When we had the first big Pride weekend in Chatham-Kent and we opened the Rainbow Crosswalk, you saw comments on social media from people that had left this community that said, I'm proud that the place I grew up did that. And that puts you back on the map. And when they do see an opportunity, maybe instead of thinking I wasn't going to move back, now they see, you know what, this is a place that's going to welcome me.
Right. Anybody want to touch on anything else? We're getting down to time. Okay.
I would just jump on this comment that you're looking to, when it comes to this election, what you want to really embrace are, so Brock's talking about things like inclusion, right, and those things. That's leadership courage. You've talked about an individual that brought forward a motion that wouldn't have necessarily been popular, right, that not in all cases was well received. Those are isolated things, but you've got to have leadership courage. Sometimes you've got to go out on the limb, sometimes you're by yourself. I think the purpose, though, of what you're trying to do here, Ben, is say, how do you as a community work together? You've got an individual like Brock that I would just say specifically on this point that was able to get consensus amongst leadership to say this is something that's worth investing in. Why? Because it makes a difference and it really matters. And so when you're trying to grow and attract, inclusivity has got to be one of those driving principles. And if it's not, then you've got to really have a gut check and say, what kind of courage do I have to step out on a limb? And what am I willing to learn as a result of that? Not everybody has all the right answers, but I think as a collective group, you can go to the table and say, you know what, the fact that we don't agree tells me I have something to learn. So what can you teach me? What can I know differently? And then be able to collectively put your mind together and say, this is the best solution that satisfies the needs of what the community is asking for. You do have people like that in this community. You have a lot of people like that in this community. You do have those kinds of leaders. The divisiveness doesn't need to exist. We've got a pretty awesome place to be. So we can absolutely be the central point to Southwestern Ontario, keep what we have, but also grow where we are by those types of things.
Awesome. Okay, thank you everybody that's come here, and thank you guys for watching. Hit that share button. We're going to wrap it up in a second here. We're going to go around the table 1 minute at a time. You can talk about whatever you want, and for the minute though, if you don't have a topic, kind of talk about how you plan on working as a team in a 17-member council. Okay, so if you don't got a topic you really want or are passionate about, just talk about 1 minute on how you're going to be a part of that team. And for those watching at home, I just want to tell you, thank you to the Blair brothers for sponsoring this. Thank you for the 10-7 Cafe. All you guys hitting the share, like, and watching these. And again, thank you to all the candidates who came for the first, second, and third sessions here. And if you want to watch these after, go to benlabadie.com, and we'll post a link after. But we'll end this, and we'll start with you, Chris, and,
Sure.
and end with Don.
So I think the question is about
Team.
working as a team. So in a lot of years of leadership roles, capacities, and different things, I've come to really understand two things. As a leader, you want to be able to step forward and say this. I trust and I lead with trust first and foremost. The only way you can do that is by getting to know somebody and really understand who they are and what they're about.
Get to know
It's the only way you can
Trevor.
understand the issues that they're facing. The second part of that is consistency. So you have to show up doing and acting like you say you are going to. And I think those are the two principal ingredients to building a working group. We don't have to agree, and we probably shouldn't agree, because if everybody walks in saying yes, then the solution's already been arrived at. So you've got to have that constructive tension, but you've got to be willing to lead with trust. You've got to be able to be trustful, and if you can do that consistently, then you're going to be able to build the right kind of consensus to make real, impactful, meaningful change. And that's what everybody's asking for, right, is to see something different. Leadership with a different vision.
Perfect.
You said you were going to go Don next.
Okay, we'll go down there. Okay, we'll put Don on the spot. I
That
was
was gonna
going
be last.
Oh, I'll go next if
Wait,
you
wait,
want.
wait.
Let's
Okay,
put
no,
Don. We'll put the heat on Don
so,
here.
So I'm going to take something I want to talk about. So I'm a believer that I don't want anybody is when I'm in council, I don't want anybody left behind. So we
That's
had an
my
opportunity.
Yeah.
Oh, so so nobody left. Okay, so nobody left behind. Anyway, so I do apologize. That's
No
a plug for you.
no problem.
I guess now I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's all good.
It's 'cause of
Anyway,
Trevor.
so last time we had an opportunity to share thoughts around community and seniors and poverty, stuff like that. So while I am on council, thinking positively, I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to be who they want to be and be able to be successful in what they want to be. So I'm just going to put a plug out there. I'm going to be sleeping on the street on Friday night to bring awareness to the men's shelter. So I would encourage you to be out there. Like, there are people, sometimes not of their own doing, but are on the streets. And like I think I mentioned, I did not realize that existed until I worked downtown and seen, sleeping bags and whatnot. So I'm going to be sleeping on the street Friday night. I'm looking for people to sponsor me because we need to raise money for the men's shelter. I know there's women's shelters too, but we need to make sure that we as a community can come together to make poverty non-existent in the future. So thank you.
Awesome. Trent.
All right. So hello, Ward 2.
Can't get out of it this
I'm going to talk right to you now, Ward 2. You're electing a team. Ward 6 is electing a team as well. Ward 2 elects a team of 3. You have 3 votes. You have to decide who you want on the team. If you can't elect a group of people that work together, any ward falls apart. That's just the way it is. In this election, I'd ask you to deal in fact beyond anything else. The facts are out there. They're easy to find. We do all sorts of monitoring on the dump. Aquifers, runoff, it's all right there. I'll send you the report. All you have to do is ask me. $14 million in offshoot because of the landfill. We could talk about RNG if you want to. It's safe, reliable, and clean. We could talk about our wonderful municipal water if you want. I'm on the PUC. It's clean. Those are provincial regulations. And it doesn't cause the rash. It exacerbates the rash. I will have this rash here, Hamilton, London, Sarnia. So don't worry about the water. Get in touch with me. I'll be happy to meet with you anytime you want. Again, you're electing a team of 3 here, 17 in the municipality, 1 mayor. If you can't work as a team, I'm afraid Ward 2 is going to slide backwards.
I agree.
Karen.
Well, from all the years of experience in trying to build community, collaboration is definitely the key. And it's probably one of the hardest forms of working together. Trying to pull a diverse group of people together around a common concern and arriving at consensus. Lots of examples in the work that I've done for 35 years with United Way. You know, the support that we provided to Marjorie with East Side Pride, the formation of Habitat for Humanity, the Children's Safety Village, Neighbor Link, all kinds of examples of what started as a conversation and then pulling together the various interested folks and listening to concerns and coming to an outcome that has actually sustained itself, a number of initiatives, and it all started with a conversation. So collaboration is absolutely key.
Awesome. And before Brock goes here, to wrap it up, I want to say thank you to Matthew Tape, okay? Yeah. So, you know, I tried to take all the credit for doing these lives, but I can't do it without my 6 a.m. Team that I walk out every day. Not every day. I miss a lot of days.
You show up for 10 minutes at the end.
One, two, skip a few, you know. But Matt puts all this together. He does an amazing job, and I just kind of trust that it's going to happen. And I don't really know how it all works. So, Matt, thank you very much. And we're going to wrap it up. Brock,
Sure.
go for it.
So I'm going to borrow from what you just said and from what Karen just said. So I think that saying thank you is important in team building. And we don't do it a lot. And sometimes it's a challenging thing to do that's easy to forget. And reaching across the table, talking to people and saying thank you, I think is important when you're trying to build those relationships and build a team. And to Karen's point, she said listen. And I think when you're working in a team, particularly when you're working in a team of 18 people, all with some sort of agenda, all with similar goals, but maybe different goals, you're going to have to listen a lot more than you talk. And listening involves not just sitting there and letting someone else talk, but it involves engaging in what they're saying. It's really easy to listen to people who agree with you, and it's more challenging to listen to people that don't agree with you, that maybe come from a different point of view, but you learn the most when you listen to people that don't agree with you. So you need to reach out to those corners of the community, reach out to the other leaders in the community, have those conversations, and approach those conversations with an open mind. No one around that table is going to have the answer to every problem. No one's going to be able to solve every issue throughout the municipality on their own, but we can do it when we listen to each other, when we respect each other, and when we recognize that we share far more than we're different. So I think that that's the main component of finding that ability to work together and to reach those goals that we have as a community.
Awesome. So, hey guys, thank you very much for coming out. Thank you to everybody at home watching and hitting that share button. And thank you for Christian for this last round here. Trevor Thompson, Brock McGregor, Karen Kirkwood-White, and Don Fuoco. Again, hit that share button, and thank you very much, guys.